Hi, Lain.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I'm so excited to talk to you, fellow alumna, fellow Stanford alumna. We were just riffing on our collegiate commonality.
Exactly.
I love that
So,
place. So thank you so much for being here for having this conversation. I'm really excited to talk to you. You have a really interesting background in terms of how you've been able to develop your business, and so I think that's going to be really exciting to talk about. So
I'm excited. Yeah.
first, I'm just going to read your bio so that folks kind of know if they don't already know and love you, what you're up to.
Okay.
With degrees from Stanford and Syracuse University, Lain Ehman loves developing creative yet practical solutions for individuals and entrepreneurs. She has worked with many leading online business owners and internet marketers, including folks like Pat Flynn, John Lee Dumas, Jamie Tardy Masters, Ray Edwards, and many, many more. She's the author of several best-selling books. She speaks, consults, and coaches on topics including online business, personal development, productivity, creativity, and community building. She has written for the Boston Globe, the Industry Standard, Entrepreneur.com, Selling Power Magazine, and hundreds of other publications, and she's spoken at dozens of venues, including New Media Expo, which just happened again, Blogger this year in 2016, NAMS, and the Smart Passive Income podcast, as well as some other awesome podcasts. So we are super excited to chat with you. I am super excited to chat with you.
Me too. Thank you.
So can you kind of just give folks a little bit more background into kind of what you did to be, sitting here in front of your maybe kitchen shutters, working from home, kind of running a business? What brought you here?
Sure. So I had one of those backgrounds where what I'm doing now has absolutely nothing to do with what I went to college for, which is pretty interesting because we were just talking about that. I got my undergrad degree in public policy and then my graduate degree in public administration, and had every intention of going into government on the administration side, so the non-political side, and very quickly realized that that was not the world for me. I worked at the state level and then the local level in a couple of different organizations and state government, local government, and just really could not handle it. I'm all about efficiency, about getting things done as quickly as possible. Let's set the goal and move towards it. And just dealing with all these different factions. I mean, take office politics and multiply that like to the nth degree. And it's politics, right? So I somehow should have anticipated that, but I didn't. So I moved out of that world and started writing more and more. Went into marketing, did some PR work, did some things like that, and loved writing, loved words. It's something I've always been passionate about, but didn't really think that I can make a living as a writer. This is kind of pre-internet days. So submitting to magazines required sending along your manuscript with a self-addressed stamped envelope and waiting a month or two. And it just was a very painful process. But over time, I kind of just ended up moving more and more into that world until the point where when my first son was born, and he's graduating now, we were just talking about that, graduating from high school. So he's 18. I was a full-time freelance journalist at that point, just building it slowly, pre-internet again, all local newspapers, and then moving up to larger magazines and things like that. And
you probably got a fax machine at some point, right? That
totally,
awesome fax machine.
totally. That it rings in the middle of the night, and wakes everybody up. So I think my husband still has one. He holds on to things. So then I started writing for, I was actually at that point in time writing for a lot of business magazines and tech publications. A lot of them are no longer with us because this is right before the first tech boom and bust, right around 2000. And I grew up in Silicon Valley, so tech is kind of in the water. And so I was really good at translating high-tech jargon from the engineers and the developers into layman's terms that people could understand and relate to. So I had a little niche in that, and I wrote for a lot of different publications. And then they started going out of business, and I had more kids, and I was thinking, I'm not really working all that much, so why don't I do something that I really enjoy? The tech stuff is great, but I got into scrapbooking. As a mom, it was 2000. People were starting to scrapbook. And I was like, I kind of like this. I get to tell my family's stories and be creative, but I don't have to know how to draw. And fast forward, I became an editor for a scrapbook magazine because they needed writers. And of course, I can't just scrapbook. I have to make money at it. So was working as an editor for scrapbook magazine. scrapbook magazines started folding as well, as all publications have done. And so I thought, I wonder if I could do this myself online. People are starting to start blogs, so maybe I should look into that. So it was around 2009 or so, and I started my first website. And I had a following from the time that I was writing for the scrapbooking magazines and I was teaching classes. And so people started reading my blog, and then they started taking classes from me. And then I started looking at what other people were doing to market their businesses and decided to start producing online events, virtual events for the crafting industry. Most scrapbookers tend to be moms with kids, hard to get away from home. So I thought I'll bring the classes to them. So for about the past 6 years or so, there was about a 6-year period in there where that's what I was doing. I was producing these large-scale virtual events for the scrapbooking industry and really enjoying it. And then started kind of moving on in my life and in my business life as well, personal and business, and thought, you know what, I want to do something different. I tend to get bored, if you can't tell, and a lot of different interests. And I thought, I want to try something new. And because I had built this business very successfully, people were asking me how I did it. And so that kind of provided the path to doing some business and marketing consulting. And now that's what I do. I'm a writer, and I do a lot of writing in a lot of different fields. And then I also help business owners with their content strategy. So it might be word related. It's all words, right? Whether it's a webinar or a sales sequence, an autoresponder series, or social media updates, or whatever it might be. I help them strategize how to grow their business, get more customers, sell more products using communications strategically. So kind of a long story, but they're roundabout, but here I am.
Yeah, I love it. So talk to me a bit about the way that when you were running these big online events, you were essentially a convener of experts, connecting experts to audiences, right?
Yes.
Were you learning at the same time from your experts, I assume?
Yes, definitely. Yes. And I think that's one of the reasons I was able to do so well in that industry, because a lot of people will find an industry that they don't have a passion in, a niche. They do one of the searches that people recommend in terms of, SEO or Google searches and what's coming up. And they find some little micro niche that they're like, I can master that. I can be the number one search result, but they have no experience or interest in it. They're just purely going. But I understood the people in the industry because I was one of them. And I could say, okay, when I'm producing these events, to an outsider, this class might look very similar to this class. They're like interchangeable, but to somebody who's in it, they know that these are two very distinct topics. Like a chef who looks at an assortment of knives, and to most of us, they look, I only need 2 knives, right? The bread knife and the big hacker knife. But they need all these knives because they know how to use each and every one. So I was somebody who understood the use of all those different knives and understood how things fit together. So when I was producing events, I could make sure that the classes really were not synchronized, but really had that sense of cohesion amongst them, that we didn't have 4 classes that were basically the same thing. Whereas somebody who didn't understand might see them more similarly. So, and I would always pick things that I wanted to learn too. So I would say, okay, let's get this person because that sounds really cool. And yeah.
So how did you go about prioritizing that? I mean, you talk about how your work sort of producing these events in the crafting world was really much of your work was this idea of like working with the talent, right? You were working with the talent, bringing them in, producing them. How were you able to still prioritize your own learning in the midst of that?
It was I think a lot of the ideas for the events would come from what I was seeing online or when there were magazines or in the craft store. And I could say, that's really cool. I wonder what's going on there. I see tons of this on Pinterest, but I haven't seen anybody do anything about this. So like, if you're in this world at all, planners have now become like an art form. There are all these products that you can use to decorate your planners, from stamps to stickers to all this stuff. It's crazy. And I first saw it and I was like, that is nuts. That's the last thing in the world that I would ever do. But then I was like, people are doing this and I need to find out more about this. And we ended up producing a whole event around planners and why people are doing it, how to incorporate it so it's not just a distraction, but it actually is helping you keep track of of your life, because I've got that efficiency part of me too. There needs to be some practicality there, and how to use stickers and all this stuff. It sounds really funny to anybody who's not in the world.
No, I'm a total planner addict. I have 3 of them that I switch between because I haven't decided which one I'm going to stay with for 2016.
People will have like 10 different planners that they're using simultaneously, and one's their health and fitness one, and one's their dreams and goals, and one's this and one's so so we did this whole planner event, and that was really fun. But it was driven by this curiosity, like, I see this trend. How long is this going to stick around? Because sometimes those are in and out really fast.
Sure.
Like the mom jeans came back for a hot second and now they're out again. Thank goodness. So is this going to stay or is this going to go? And then because we were smaller, we could jump on it really fast. Where there are other places online to go for crafting classes, but they tend to be much larger. And just like any small organization, one of our competitive advantages is the agility. We're nimble. So I could say, okay, we need to get on this. And in 3 months, we could have an event where the larger organizations or schools or businesses, it's going to take them 8 months to a year to produce that same class, just because they've got this schedule. And we're just much more on the moment, in the moment.
Right. You're nimble and able to produce quickly. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about this idea of, because I'm sure this comes up sort of in the mindset coaching work you do now, this idea of sort of not listening to other people's opinions and yet also following people's advice. I mean, because many of us seek guides or experts to learn from, whether at a conference or at a virtual event or just through an audiobook or something, but then also making sure that we kind of own our own life. And you have this quote I wanted to read. So often, though, we base the decisions for our own life. Should I go to law school? Should I cut my hair short? Should I take job A or job B? On what we think other people will say, want, or judge. We are so scared of other people's opinions that some of us spend our whole lives trying to bend ourselves to other people's wills. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about the difference between making wise decisions because you've sought good counsel versus just listening to other people's
Right. And I think there's 2 elements to that. One is making wise decisions based on someone else's experiences, maybe like you could say, well, Lain tried this and it really didn't work. And this is why it didn't work. And she's advising me to look at this because she wishes she had looked at that before she did X, Y, and Z. Or there's Lain's going to be mad at me or judge me because I don't do X, Y, or Z. So there's a different spin on it there. And I think both are worth investigating. The idea of, it's really looking at that why. Am I doing this out of fear or am I doing this out of an attempt to accomplish my goal that I've set? And it's my why, it's not someone else's. And so, the best coaches will never make someone feel like the coach will be disappointed in them if they do something against what they advise. And so I think that's an important thing that you should look at, like if the listeners or your audience now is working with a coach, to make sure they're not following the coach because of an emotional reason versus this is really a practical reason. Because I think that's a really important distinction. We can really want to please people that we admire. And there are times where I've worked with coaches and I've said, you know what, I love what you said and I'm going to do the opposite. And my best coaches were like, okay, great, let's see what happens. So, and then I had coaches who, I don't think I've ever had any who were like, oh my gosh, you're really going to be sorry. But, most of the ones I have worked with have been like, okay, let's give it a go. I understand why you're going to do this because they know it's my business. So,
wow.
So there's that side of things. And then there's also something I tell a lot of my business clients where when I'm helping them, particularly at the early stages of choosing what path they're going to take. And I tell them there's no magic beans because so many of us online want to find the one mentor, the one course, the one book, the one whatever it is that will give us that answer, the system. And I tell them this too. I said, by the time something becomes a system, it's usually too late, whether it's FBA fulfilled by Amazon, or it's Kindle, or it's the new SEO trick, or whatever it might be. Once somebody's turned it into a system, the gold rush is probably over. So you can look at somebody's success and do some modeling and seeing why it worked at the time. But so much of it is timing. I mean, you look at somebody like Pat Flynn. He didn't have a system that he was operating under. John Lee Dumas had a pretty good plan, but I would say he never anticipated that it would blow up as big as it is now. And he hit it right because he was doing one of the first daily podcasts. Now there are a bunch of daily podcasts. He could not have that same success even if he, with all his skills and contacts and everything he had, started now. A lot of it is timing. A lot of it is the luck of the draw. So if somebody says, follow this exact system and you will get this exact result, that's really a warning sign to me. Not that it can't ever happen, but the timing has so much to do with it. And if you're the 50th daily podcast, you're going to have a different result than if you were the first, like John Lee is.
That's really interesting. Yeah, timing. And there's always some amount of luck that goes into success as well, obviously.
Completely. One of the best business books that I've ever read is by Scott Adams, the Dilbert guy.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the exact title. It's a long title, but it's like something like Stories of My Failure or How I Failed at Almost Everything and I'm still to succeed. Or he's a really interesting guy. And he wrote his book about how he failed at all these things that people never saw.
Wow.
But because he succeeded at this one thing, people are like, oh my gosh, she's such a success. But he's like, it's a numbers game. And I'll have to make sure to send you the link to it. It was so good because it was like, he's like, if I just try enough things and put myself into positions to be successful, something's going to succeed. And I mean, you've been in Silicon Valley world where you see all these startups that never go anywhere. And there are people who hop from startup to startup because they just need to hit one, hit the IPO, cash out, and they're done. And they don't mind the 12 failures because they know eventually if they do enough of them, their thought is they'll someday hit it big. So
absolutely. Yeah. So what do you see the difference is between mentoring and coaching? What's kind of the difference there?
I think they're used to be interchangeable a lot of the times. I think people think mentoring is more, or I guess the way I see it is mentoring would be less formal in terms of it's a more personal relationship. And then this is just my spin on it. I wouldn't necessarily say that a mentoring would be a paid situation for the long term. I think in terms of dollars, I think a good mentor-mentee relationship, there's a payoff for the mentor, maybe in a different way. It's almost like an internship or the apprenticeships of old, like Benjamin Franklin day, where you would work under somebody to learn things from them, and you're doing work for them, but they're mentoring you and telling you not just what to do, but why and how it fits into this bigger picture. Whereas a coaching, it's more like this cut and dried. You're going to come to me. We're going to sign up for 3 months, 6 months, a year. You're going to pay me X a month. I'm going to do 3 calls with you. It's much more scripted. And there's definitely room for both of those. But I think the mentor is almost like presented as this fairy godmother thing where if you just find your mentor, all your dreams will come true and wish upon a star. And I've had people who have unofficially become mentors to me, but I've never had that official mentoring relationship where someone's kind of taken me under their wing and guided me along. Some people have become mentors after being coaches, but I never started out with that. So
you've started out in a coach relationship and then moved on to mentoring.
Right.
Where either that's very powerful.
Where I kind of moved beyond what they were coaching at that time, or I needed something like I was going to them for coaching on how to do this. And once that was done, we moved on, and I wasn't coaching with them anymore, but we still had a great relationship. And I felt, we felt very more collegial in terms of it wasn't a paid relationship. Like I could go say, geez, this just happened. What do you think? How do I handle this? Or, but it wasn't a paid relationship any longer.
So I have sort of one more question, and it's about this idea that you were just talking about of sort of when you know to move on from a coach or a mentor. So, you have coaching clients and you've sought coaches, you've seen, different coaches over these seen coaches, I guess, learn from coaches over the years. How do you decide when it's time to sort of move on from someone and kind of either go out on your own or find someone else?
That is that's such a great question. And I don't think there's any one answer to that. Like 6 months and you're done or whatever it is. There are people who do have coaching programs where they teach you a very specific thing. Like John Lee Dumas has the podcasting course, and I don't think he does any one-on-one coaching anymore, but he in the past has had programs where I will teach you to launch your podcast. You'll have it up and running by the time we finish working together. And I'll answer your questions along the way. It's very beginning and end. You've got a deliverable at the end. Whereas there's other relationships that I've been in, and I've been in some of those where I went to learn a very specific skill set. And then the coaching part came in because I think it's different than a course because there's more one-on-one interaction and Q&A, and they're looking at my specific business, and the access is a little bit higher. So that's how I would differentiate that from a course. And then there's other coaches I've worked with where we've set a year and we're going to be working together over the year. And it's not necessarily, I'm going to take you from here to here, but it's more like you're going to have access to me. I'm going to answer your questions, whatever comes up, that kind of thing. And the ones that I knew it was time to move on, and there actually have been a couple where I've signed up and I felt like it was not at all what I needed at the time. And one, I stuck it out because I was like, I signed up for a year. I guess I'm in for a year. But the next one, I was like, you know what? She really misrepresented this program. And the people she was having teach us were less experienced than I was. And so I stuck in for 3 months and I went to every call and did every exercise and came to her and said, I'm not learning anything. And of course, she tried to sell me into a higher level coaching thing at that point. I was like, no, you know what? We just need to be done. And that's how I knew with that. I was like, I'm not learning anything. I'm not stretched. I'm not getting what I need right now. So I think that's probably what it is. Have you learned what you need to learn from this person? And every coach out there has a different expertise. One might be great at helping you access, like Jamie Masters, we talked about her in the intro. She is like networking queen, and she actually leads a mastermind that I'm in right now. So she's my coach for the mastermind, but it's a group coaching thing. And she just knows everybody. And if you want to learn, how to connect, and she's got her podcast, she's got very specific things she's done, but she's also got things that she hasn't done before. And if I wanted to learn one of those things, like launching an e-commerce store, I'm sure she could give me guidance in that area because she's so knowledgeable, but she has never done that. And if I wanted to learn from the person who's going to help me get to 6 figures or 7 figures in e-commerce, she might not be the best fit for that. I might go to somebody else who that's their specialty. But if I wanted the relationship building or something else, I'd go to Jamie. So yeah, everybody's got kind of their little specialty.
No, I love that line though, that have you learned what you need to learn from that person? And then sort of deciding that that's a moment to move on.
Right. And the good coaches will really bless that. And sometimes, you cycle back too. You say, okay, I learned that, and now I'm ready to learn this other thing from you. So,
wow.
Yeah, and that's really cool too to see that, because whether on the coaching side or on the student side, to see people in a new perspective is really neat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, so just sort of, can you kind of in closing tell folks where people can find you and what you're really up to today and what you're really focused on and working hard on?
Yeah. So right now I am my son's graduating. So that's like the thing that's looming over everything. I can't believe it. It's like so weird, but a lot of my energy is taken up just with dealing with that and trying not to feel the feels. People say, feel all the feels. I'm like, no, I don't want to feel them. I'll feel them once he goes away. But work-wise, I just really help small business owners, entrepreneurs. That's kind of my sweet spot with people who have an existing business and are up and running and are ready to really either fine-tune their messaging or get more out of what they're doing, or look at expanding. They know they should be doing a podcast or webinar series or whatever, or things are just not, the pieces are there, but they're not quite fitting right. I'm really good at looking at that big picture and saying, okay, this is where we need to jiggle things or cut things or whatever to make it all work together more smoothly. So across all industries, I'm helping people, mostly online entrepreneurs, a couple non-online or offline. It's hard to believe anybody's offline these days.
It is.
Yeah, but that's what I do. Everything from creating content, lead generation pieces, reports, to consulting on sales funnels and things like that.
And where can folks find you?
I am at lainehman.com, and that's so easy to spell. I need a much easier name. It's LAINEHMANN.com. And I'm also on Facebook, Twitter. You can find me kind of all the usual places. So
usual places. Well, thank you so much for this.
Oh
much
gosh,
appreciated.
it's been so fun. Thank you. I'm so used to asking all the questions. It was really fun
That's funny.
to on the side. Yeah, I like it. I kind of like this. So. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.